This is the TechCurrents podcast, real talk about technology and stories from working in the tech world. All opinions expressed on this show are solely those of the host and guests. And now, here is your host, Sam Cavalier.
Welcome back to a squeaky fun time here at the TechCurrents podcast. I am your host, Sam Cavalier, and I am joined once again by my co-host and best friend, Ron Mellinson. Ron, we've got, I think we have a really exciting discussion lined up for today, and I believe that it's definitely something that builds on our theme of helping people in terms of figuring out where they are with their career, what they're going to do next. I think it's really it's a good foundation, whether they're currently a job seeker or, as we have said in many other discussions, you might not be an immediate job seeker. You're just a job seeker in waiting.
That's right. And, for those of you who've actually, first of all, thanks for everybody for coming in and listening. For those of you who've been following me on LinkedIn, I was impacted by the January reduction in force. I think Sam and you and I had did a bit of a recording on that. I think we're going to publish that probably shortly. But we've been talking about having a plan B. We've been talking about how to reestablish oneself. We've been talking about opportunities today, while either you are currently employed, to really take advantage of the opportunity and the time of being currently employed to build your next chapter, right? I've used the term having a plan B, and the idea being having an opportunity to not be severely impacted if and or when you are tapped on the shoulder and advised that your job is no longer needed or your position has been eliminated due to many instances, not your own fault. In fact, in 98% instances, it's not your own fault. And we've talked very specifically about having a plan, but not hoping you don't need it, but everyone should have it. There's a financial component, which we've talked a little bit about and I've written about. There's a piece around keeping your skills up to date. There was a component about keeping your resume, your LinkedIn up to date. And there was also a piece we talked about going ahead and interviewing, even though you're potentially gainfully employed and happily employed. Look at opportunities to interview, because interviewing is a muscle. And that muscle will atrophy over time if you don't use it. And I know many folks, both at Amazon and elsewhere, who've been in roles 2, 3, 5, 7, 10 years. Heck, I was there for 12 and a half and had not really interviewed since they had gotten their job. Right? That's a long time to go without any practice and without any skills. So my recommendation has always been once or twice a year, sometimes 3 times a year, take an interview, apply for a job, see what the market's looking like. Does your resume resonate today? Right? What does the new normal look like in hiring? Right? We've talked about ATSs. What's scary around the ATS? What's scary around AI? What are the keywords you need to be focused on? And part of what we talked about is building and continuing to enhance your network. So I know we are joined today by a great friend of mine, Matt Collins. Matt and I have known each other for not quite as long as Sam and I have known each other, but Matt and I have known each other for probably close to 15 years now. Matt was actually we worked together at Microsoft. Matt was a key reason why I left Microsoft and actually joined Amazon to help build the professional services organization, working with Matt in order to do so. Matt has had a vibrant career, a lot of different opportunities, done some amazing things. I don't want to steal any of your fire, Matt. So if you'd be so kind as maybe introduce yourself a little bit, talk a little bit about what your background is and what we're here to talk about. And I greatly appreciate not only you taking time out of your day to join us, but I really want to thank you on behalf of everyone who listens for the knowledge with which you are about to impart.
Welcome to the program.
Us. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, I really appreciate it. I love what you're doing, by the way. I think there's Lots of people who are looking for help and guidance and assurance, building confidence. Maybe they are feeling a little fear, uncertainty, and doubt just with change that's going on. Maybe they're excited, but they don't know how to apply themselves. And so you guys have super interesting practical advice, and I love that you've kind of made a cause out of it. So it's fun. So I'm glad to contribute. I have been in a little bit about me. I've been in the technology industry for, well, forever, I guess. If I date myself a little bit, I a computer nerd as a teenager, West Coast Computer Fair, pre-PC, so in the 80s, if you can believe that. And so
buying 10 megabyte hard drives for $300 and $400.
Yeah, or before there were 10 megabyte hard drives, if you can believe that. My first computers didn't have hard drives. I remember when the 10 megabyte hard drive came out for an IBM PC, and we were also experimenting with networking, and there weren't enough interrupts in the PC that we had in order to have the hard drive and the network card at the same time. And so it was kind of like, you know, and it's one of those things, you know, I think there's kind of 2 points of view on this, but one of those things that you uncover at 2 a.m. because it took forever to figure out what's really going on. And I think the other perspective that's maybe a little different than today is that a lot of people invested in those early stages of technology and they just didn't actually expect things to work. So, you know, today when you say, well, AI doesn't do everything that I hoped it would or thought it would, or it did something right or wrong, you think back to just what did it take to write a memo using a word processor, and whether you could get the computer to turn on and get logged in and booted, and did the disk drive work right? The floppy disk drive work right? Could you find the floppy disk drive you saved something on because it was in a file folder somewhere, because we didn't have the fantastic services like Dropbox and Google Drive and Office 365 and all that fun stuff.
A IRQ 7 or IRQ 5. You know, remember back in the day we used to you moved the little jumpers,
move the jumper
between the sound.
around.
The sound card, you really didn't want that parallel port anyway, so let's just move the jumper over.
Nobody uses that.
Nobody used that. And then Windows 95 came out and destroyed all the stuff. We used to wear those hoods. So I still got my hood. I could still put it up, but we used to walk in and do IRQ jumpers all the time.
So many things that when we were growing up would have, you know, lived in the realm of, you know, edge science fiction that we see come to pass now.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. I guess if I tie that to the theme for being here, I've been through a bunch of stages in my career and in life, and I've worked with and built many teams, some really big, thousands of people, small, very focused groups and teams. I've had the opportunity to work with thousands of customers in my roles and get to see how they do things, organize, how their people work, what their cultures are like. And so I love the opportunity to maybe share some of that thinking and wisdom with your audience and with you guys, and collaborate on ways to help people really gain agency in times of change. And this is a big change coming, in my view. Think back to what we just talked about, you know, the PC, and then PCs got networked, and then, you know, Windows came along and you had things like Visual Basic, and we're building applications all over the place. And, you know, the PC people took over the data centers, which were largely mainframes way back then. And companies started to run on PCs, and then data centers ended up with thousands of computers, and you ended up then with, you know, opportunities for broad scale networking. And then the internet and e-commerce era kind of came along, and mobile devices that do everything magically for us. We no longer need to put tapes in answering machines so we can get messages when people call our homes. Matter of fact, I don't even have a phone. You know, it took me a long time to get rid of my phone. I think younger generations today, they can't even imagine getting a POTS line in your house to take phone calls, much less an answering machine with a tape drive. Like, what is tape? So, yeah, I think in the context of transitions, what I see in my role, and I'm working at Amazon now still. I've been there 13-ish years. I've been thinking for a few years about what's next for me. in kind of 10-year horizons. What's my future 10-year horizon look like? I was at Microsoft for 15 years, had the pleasure to work with Ron and crossed paths a bit with Sam, maybe not so directly, but I know what he did and where he was. And
that makes one of us, because I have no idea what the hell he did. And he worked for me.
As I've gotten to know him better, I wonder why, we hadn't actually met each other in person. So, and maybe we did somewhere and just forgot, because that's what happens when you get old. I'm personally thinking about my career development and growth. I don't think you have to be, as Ron said, out of a job to be thinking about what your steps and stages and investments should be in your career. It's, after all, it's your career. You don't have a job and then whatever you do in your job is your career. So, I would encourage everybody to take agency and really think about, what am I doing? What are my skills? Are the opportunities afforded to me the right ones? Do I have the right sponsorship? If I don't, how do I think about cultivating that? And the network that we started with, that Ron raised at first, is super critical. If you get into a place where you're looking for a job and you're thinking it's your resume, and now you don't email, or now you email your resume, or now you use a LinkedIn profile or whatever, I would tell you, think really hard about how you cultivate and leverage your connections, because your resume and your LinkedIn profile is not going to get you a job, or most likely it won't get you a job. It will be by leverage and recommendations and people who can attest to you, know your skills, provide some sponsorship and support, et cetera. And so I think this theme or idea of cultivating and investing in your network, and I think it's more than just what others can do for you, but what you do for others. And I think you'll find that there's a rich opportunity, and it's well beyond being prepared for a job change, or maybe even finding a job. And so I think the topic today, I think, is super interesting, and it's one I've been practicing some tips and tricks I learned from friends and mentors and whatnot, that hopefully you guys will benefit from, and maybe will help you out.
I actually think it's been a important topic of not only discussions that we have here, because we've had the benefit of being able to draw from a pool of guests that are effectively connections that we've made over our career, but also in some of the writing that we've done. In my mind, connecting with people is critically important. Our end line, if you will, is always to take care of one another. And it's, it's because, in spite of everything else, whether we're talking about careers, whatever, in the climate that we have going on today, taking care of one another is, in my mind, is going to be critical for us being as a people, to be able to move on to what's next, and having, being able to connect with one another and see each other for who we are. Like I said, outside of what we're doing career-wise, I think it's critical. So I think what we're going to talk about here today, I think, is incredibly important.
Yeah. And we've talked about in the past that networking with others is, I think I used the term more like a savings account. Okay. You need to put things in, you need to put yourself out there. You need to create relationships with folks, add value before you ask or need anything. And the last thing you want to do is just randomly reach out to somebody potentially you haven't spoken to in years and be like, "Hey, I just got laid off," like me. Can you get me a job at your place? Because no one's incented to actually step out and help you, right? They barely remember who you are. Maybe they met you at a reInvent or a Microsoft event, a decade ago, and you swapped LinkedIn information. They've just been floating around in your contacts forever. And then you realize, oh my God, they're at Lockheed Martin. I always want to work at Lockheed Martin. Let me talk to that person. And they're like, I don't even remember who you were. So really nurturing a network and building a network and taking advantage of a network in a bidirectional manner, right? Take advantage of the opportunity to speak to people when you don't need anything, as opposed to only when you need something, right? Don't be the parasite. Be the connector, be the person who's reaches out. How you doing? Saw your name on LinkedIn, interesting post you made. I know, Matt, you're going to go into a lot of details and some of the things that you personally have done and how you challenged yourself to create I don't say a system, but a kind of a structure to your connections, and you're building your relationships, both net new and historical. In fact, that one of the reasons you and I reconnected after a little bit, after we went separate ways inside Amazon, is we always stayed in touch. Whether it be through Slack inside Amazon, whether it be through LinkedIn, heck, even through texting each other once in a while and seeing how each other's doing. So anyway, I do want people to think about, you want to take advantage of your network, but you want to treat it like a savings account. You need to put things in before you can withdraw. Okay. We have an article, a TechCurrents article on that exact topic, on how to treat your network as a savings asset, not just taking advantage of it, because you don't want to be drawing down on something you don't have any money in, right? Because then you overdraw your network and then nobody wants to deal with you. So anyway, with that, I want to transition it back over to Matt, because I think Matt's got some brilliant ideas and some real time-tested, personal-tested mechanisms and processes that you went through. I know specifically around the networking piece, reinvigorating your network, adding value to your network before you needed to potentially tap into your network. So I'm going to shut up and turn it over to Mr. Matt. So take us through that process, and certainly appreciate it.
I appreciate that. Let me, I'll give you a little bit of a story to maybe set the foundation for how I got to the process or the mechanism I think I'll share that had really helped me. And I was at Microsoft for 15 years, and I did a lot of fantastic things, met lots of people, had just I loved working there for a long, long time. And, and all good things that come to an end at some point. There were ups and downs always. That's life. And jobs and careers are part of life. So the thing I told myself as I was taking my next role, which was to join this then small group at Amazon, AWS, or Amazon Web Services, to establish a professional services capability that would help customers with leveraging, using, scaling, adopting, getting value out of AWS. And this was very early days, 2013 or so. Most people didn't know what cloud computing was back then. One of the things I told myself as I was going through that transition is that I promised myself that if I end up working for whatever company while I was in the interviewing process and thinking about my transition, in this case, it ended up being Amazon and AWS, that I wouldn't wait 15 years and wait to get to a place where maybe the last year or two were unsatisfying, that I would start thinking about what's next sooner. And for me, it was my mindset, being my age and time in the industry or in business and a career, which might be different for people that are in different stages of their career today. But as a somewhat older person, loyalty was something that was kind of what you did. Like, people work for companies for a long time. Matter of fact, many of the people who were more senior to me at companies I'd worked for, like American Express and GE Capital, and then going into Microsoft, were in their roles for 25, 27, 35 years. And they were in the same company often for that long. And so I was kind of like the young guy, the sort of newbie, if you will, until I wasn't one day. But the idea that I would work for Microsoft forever, like, it didn't really even occur to me. Even when things got to be at a place where I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, or whether what I wanted to do aligned with the role I was in, and then, would I seek another role somewhere in the company? And at that point in time, it was very difficult to transition. Microsoft was under a fair amount of pressure. I was in a senior position, I can offer any advice to people who are on a career trajectory or growth, the more senior you get, the less opportunities there are. The more important sponsorship is, the less important what you do and know is. Everybody at that kind of level has the right skills. Often it's, are you in the right opportunities and do you have the right sponsorship? And I ended up in a place where I didn't really have the right sponsorship. A lot of folks who I trusted and had been involved with had left the company. And so it wasn't that easy for me to move inside the organization at a senior level. All big organizations or companies have benches of people who are looking for growth opportunities, and most senior leaders have, cultivated and invested in, at least if it's a company of any scale and maturity, future talent. And if you're coming from the outside somewhere, that can be a challenge. And so I told myself, I'm not going to wait at 10 years, I'm going to start looking at my next opportunity. That's kind of shows my view of loyalty. I actually thought a decade was the time. Today, I would probably say that's crazy. I wouldn't tell myself, I would not say that to myself again. I would say, and so now I'm there, it's 13 years. So at 10, almost right around 10, to be true to that, I loved what I did. I felt well sponsored. I had great opportunities. I had global scale. I had big teams. I was still working in that professional services group, and I was thinking there must be something different. But I had an opportunity to buy or acquire companies and integrate them. I'd had opportunities to grow and scale groups and teams from scratch, to invest and build new capabilities. I had lots of exposure to senior leaders that I learned a lot from. So it was a good and interesting time. And yet, to be true to myself, I said, okay, I need to think about what's next. What's the next 10? And I called it Next 10, my Next 10 project. And there wasn't a burning platform. I didn't need to change jobs. But what I did was I started to talk to people and just say, like, how do you operate every day? What do you think about? How do you network? I hadn't, while I was involved in working with people, I didn't have an intentional way of thinking about my network. And I got some interesting advice from a few people. One thing I chose to adopt was this, I'm going to call it a mechanism, but an approach to intentionally, outside of my day job, meet with 3 people a week, with the idea that I would be learning something, sharing something, reconnecting perhaps with somebody. And so Ron mentioned, that he and I had stayed connected. In some ways, that's because, he may have ended up on my list. And so I reached out to him. And there wasn't a plan or an agenda. It wasn't, I need a job from you, Ron, or any of that. It was more, how are you doing? How's the family? He happens to have twins that are a slight bit older than my young twins that are 14 and a half or so, roughly. So we have a lot of things in common that are not necessarily job specific. He's been off in a different part of the organization within AWS for a long time. And, maybe there's a chance to gain perspective there. Are the things frustrating me, frustrating you? Because often, there's change as organizations shift and grow, and sometimes just getting different perspective can be helpful. And you can get that from friends and from previous or prior colleagues. And so I set out on this mission to schedule or have 3, it was introduced to me generally as coffee discussions, like go have 3 coffees with people. Now, in this world of COVID and in this world of video calling and things like that, and the fact that my network is generally pretty global in nature, very hard to have coffee per se with everybody. Although if you can meet with somebody in person, man, do it. That's super rich. Whether it's something after work or lunch or coffee, but it often adds to this experience. And what I found, one, I made it a commitment. I said, I'm gonna schedule proactively and think about who I'm gonna talk to every week. And I didn't let the face-to-face get in the way necessarily. I didn't have a specific agenda, or I wasn't looking for a particular topic. I did ground myself slightly in this idea that I am where I am. I've hit 10 years. I likely need to be open to the idea that I may go work for another company and do something different if I thought back to my experience with Microsoft, or maybe it's within my company, but in a different place altogether. And I was very interested from a technological point of view in some of the services we'd built and developed at Amazon. Should I go work in a service team somewhere? What would that entail if I did? What value could I bring to the table? And so one part of my strategy was picking people whom I maybe knew, but could I cultivate relationships with people within my company, thinking about a transition inside the organization to something maybe more meaningful, given that I'd spent a decade basically kind of in the same function or role, and it was time for a change. I just some fresh perspective. And then secondarily, connecting with people who I'd worked with in the past or knew that were outside of my company. And I will tell you this paid dividends. For me, one, it was intentional. It was relatively easy to do. Did I hit 3 every week? No. Did I sometimes have 5? Yes. If I was on a business trip to Europe, I'd make a point being in the time zone to try to connect with people in a time zone. Sometimes that might afford more. Often it would lead to, I would love to see you. Let's go have dinner. And we'd spend more than an hour. We would spend, 3 or 4 hours and have a really rich and deep connection or conversation. And so the intentionality, I think, is the lesson to share. And I found it to be a fascinating and rich experience. The person, by the way, that gave me this idea is an independent business person. This was just part of how they operated. It was part of being in the flow, being connected. And often it would lead to business opportunities without intention, but opening doors that you didn't know were there, or getting ideas that you maybe hadn't thought of before from other people. And then I think to the point of establishing your network, it's a way to invest in that savings account. I think in the context that Ron was talking about, the one piece actually I would add to it. So one, it's plan the time, schedule it, enjoy it, celebrate it. I picked up another thing. I think it was from Esther Dyson. If you look up Esther Dyson, famous person, early in technology, became probably one of the more famous venture capitalists or private equity people over the years. But the thing that was fascinating about her was that she had this way of networking, and she would follow up with every meeting within 24 hours with a 1 or 2 line sentence. Today, sometimes that's a text message, but it was an email back in the day when she was, and she was using a Rolodex, not her Google contacts or her iPhone contacts or whatever. But I would say schedule the time and then do a short follow-up. And there's 2 reasons for it. One, a little bit of a tickler in memory. When you come back in 6 months, there was maybe an action you said, I will do this. And so the action could be as simple as I'll make an introduction to somebody. And so do that fast. Try to do that within 24 hours, or at least I try to do within 24 hours, not always successfully. And then secondarily, it doesn't take a novel. It's literally a sentence or 2. And it provides the other person who may have also said, hey, I would do this for you. You should go talk to so-and-so. It gives them a really easy thing to just do it. Like, forward this note. You should talk to Matt about X. And so be intentional. That's number 1, I think. And then, try to find a way to close the loop and have a short follow-up. So anyway, that's been really fruitful for me. I've been at it for about 2 years. I've been thinking a lot about my transition and what I'm going to do next. And I think this has, for me, been a really empowering way to separate myself from my job, my day job. So it's kind of a side benefit. I didn't really think about it that way per se, but if I think about what my story is, I help people with technology. I help leaders with adoption of technology. Today, I think that's evolving into helping people who are facing change who lead companies as a result of AI. And there's lots of unknowns. There's lots of huge and interesting, fascinating possibilities, but there potentially also are threats and uncertainties and things from a leadership point of view. And then I think even more importantly, and from folks like Sam and Ron, I think the same is true for employees in companies. Is my job going to change as a result of it? How do I think about and gain and take agency? And I hear that in my discussions with people. And so I think that purpose is starting to really formulate for me as ways that I think I can help others and I can be a force for change and be an enabler. And I think that's part of what my future will be, either as a manager or a leader inside of a tech company, if I continue in that path, Amazon or otherwise, or in some other capacity. So hopefully that's helpful.
No, it's incredibly helpful. I think this is terrific. I want to take a quick moment to just kind of highlight that this episode that we're going to have here is part of the 2026 podcast-thon. We will be in support of No Kid Hungry, which is a national campaign for Share Our Strength focused on ending childhood hunger here in the U.S. by connecting kids with reliable meals at school and in their communities. It is a charity that I have been supporting. Our friend of the program, T. Morris, he was a guest on the program in one of our early episodes. T has been supporting them for years as live stream through Twitch and things like that. He was a stream ambassador for No Kid Hungry. So that being said, you can learn more and donate at nokidhungry.org. But I do need to take a moment to shamelessly plug our support of Podcast-thon and No Kid Hungry. So I do want to fall back on this idea of connection, and I think it ties very strongly in with this idea of taking agency over your career and not necessarily your career, but taking agency, having agency to connect for the sake of connecting. You don't have to connect for a particular reason, or Ron has talked about this many, many times, and that is if you I hate to build on the if you see something, say something kind of thing, but if somebody is impacted, don't wait for them to reach out. Connect with them. And sometimes it may be that somebody's going to reach out to you and you may not have spoken in a while. And when you're connecting with them, you may find that they're struggling right now. We say it often. The only way you get through tough times is when everybody kind of comes together. Making those connections is part of what brings us together, so that we can see that folks are more the same than they are different. Like, we all are trying to just get by. We're trying to raise a family. We're trying to just kind of get on with our career. And there are too many examples that we see with the talent pool doesn't have the power now. They don't. And so the only thing we can do is maybe try to connect and be there to help one another. But I think certainly with all the connections that are made by we have the benefit of having worked at companies for long times, and not even just within the company, right? If we're in professional services, we're touching hundreds of customers, and sometimes for long periods of time. And those are additional connections. And those are seedlings that need water and sunlight and care and feeding and things like that, right? So I mean, I think realistically that you're totally spot on, Matt. I couldn't agree with everything you just said more, right?
Yeah. So some of the challenges, at least things that we've heard recently, I get it a lot because I spend a lot of time with, we'll call them freshies or new graduates, people in their first couple of years. I'll have conversations like this, like Matt, Sam, myself. I mean, we've got arguably 30 years of potentially longer, i.e. me, a little bit longer of contacts. Right. Matt's much younger because he has a lot more his executive hair working over there. So it's, so Matt's younger than I. So
I don't think that's true, actually, Ron. I don't know what
that is pretty close.
The situation, but
but I hear a lot from, I'll call them younger folks, right? People who spend their entire life texting. They don't interact. You talk about having a coffee chat or discussions. They're socially awkward. Okay, we have a whole generation of people who are reasonably fresh out of school, who are arguably socially awkward, don't really feel comfortable with direct face-to-face interaction, right? They prefer texting. So one of the things that we've been talking about, or I've been talking to them about, is establishing, like, going through your alumni network, right? Take a look at people who've walked in your shoes before you. Okay, you don't have to have 30 years of Rolodex and 10,000 contacts like Matt, or 7,000 like Sam and I on LinkedIn. You can start with working with your alumni network. If you are new graduate, or early graduate, early stage, I think that people kick the term around freshies, but less than 5 years of experience. You may not have a worldview where you even have 100 connections. Okay, you may have significantly less, but the gold is, if you've gone to university, if you've gone to college, most college placement organizations are kind enough and willing to share a alumni directory with you that has contact information. If you look those people up on LinkedIn, many of them have profiles. Many of them are working in potentially organizations you aspire to work in. I'm not recommending you reach out to them immediately and say, "Hey, Sam, I want to come work at Mongo." But because we both went to James Madison University, right, Sam? But reach out. Hey, Sam, we both went to JMU. I'm a new graduate. I'm aspiring to be in infotech or consulting, and I see that you've done some amazing things across the course of your career. Could we connect for 15 minutes and talk about some of the things you've learned on your journey? That's all you need to do. Some people will grab onto that and pull you into their network and share their network with you. Others will ignore you, and that's okay. But the simple fact of, don't let the fact that you don't have decades of networking, right? Network connections hold you back from getting started in exactly what Matt's talking about. Having those conversations, talking to people virtually, virtual coffee chats. And the intent is to build a bit of a relationship with someone who's been there before you, right? And ask them very interesting questions. What has your experience been like? Are there any things you would have done differently? People are super interested in talking about themselves and their journey. You just have to ask. Now, it's different if you've been, in a career for a long time. You've, like Sam had mentioned, if you've, like, we were all in consulting. We were both at Microsoft and Matt and I for Amazon. And I have customers, I have contacts on my LinkedIn, people I've engaged with in a business perspective that I've kept in a personal perspective for years. And I do reach out to them once in a while. Not that I need anything, but I just reach out and say, "How's it going? As you mentioned, how are the kids? Oh, I see you transitioned. You don't work at Johnson & Johnson anymore. Now you're over at Merck. Love to hear about what the experience is, and how's it different? What are you doing?" Right? It's amazing how interested people are in not only talking about themselves, but sharing their experiences. But you have to ask. And if you don't ask, you don't get. So again, a recommendation, especially if you're in junior space, go to your school, get your alumni network, start looking at who's who in the zoo, and look for folks who have alignment with you. Obviously, if you majored in partying and going out, look at your fraternity network. But if you majored in engineering, computer science, or whatever, look for folks who came out of potentially that same group.
It doesn't have to be like, you could get some folks who are willing to, and everybody's going to be a little different, Ron, because you're absolutely right. Because you have folks that are you have a generation of kids that are very introverted, socially awkward. But at the same time, like, even if you don't, right? I've referred to a story of a young a graduate who was a football player at JMU who came across my profile on LinkedIn. So I, didn't even realize at the time that I went to JMU, but went ahead and reached out and said, hey, could we have a conversation? And I said, no problem. We chatted over LinkedIn Messenger a couple times before we got on the phone. And when we got on the phone, he explained to me what he was looking to do, the transition he was looking to make. I said, okay, I will give you my thoughts, and then what I will do is point you in the direction of a couple of other profiles that you should follow, because they are people who can help you improve on the interview process with resume things like that, and B, you want to get into sales. Here is somebody I know who does an amazing job of providing sales related tips based on their experience. I said, and you can follow them and you will get a lot out of that. And again, this is somebody, not only did I not know this person, other than the fact that, he was a football player at my alma mater, other than that, we didn't know each other at all. But he went ahead and, reached out, and, certainly I was impressed by the initiative and the preparation that he took. And that was something that he got out of football, which was terrific. On the flip side, I think, there's I'm not exactly sure where I was going to go. I needed to write down the other example. I actually had two different examples to kind of highlight this, but I think I think the point is drawn home at this point, that we've driven that point home. Like, it's, don't allow, don't think that because you have limited experience, that means you have limited options. That's not necessarily true. There are a lot of people who are willing to help. It might require some either initiative or reaching out to help level you up, but there are definitely people there. And the problem is that, of course, you have to be careful these days because there are predators in the water, but there are plenty of people out there who are willing to, provide you with the sage advice that they've learned over the years, because that's part of what they aspire to do. I mean, that's part of what I aspire to do. Like, part of one of the things I'm trying to do is get back to where I can build teams of really great people. I remembered the example we talked about customers. I left the New York area 15 years ago. Moved to California, left Microsoft, been at a couple, 3 different places, now 4 since then. And I was at VMworld in 2019. So it was 8 years after I left New York. And it turns out that I happened to see in an email or Slack thread that there was a customer that was going to be in, at VMworld in San Francisco. And I'm like, hey, I know that guy. he was one of my customers back on the East Coast. And so I shot him a note over LinkedIn and said, hey man, we haven't chatted in freaking forever. Can we? And I used to talk to him after I moved out here. I remember being at a gas station, getting gas in Oceanside and talking with him. We got together in San Francisco for lunch while we were both at VMworld. It was great to connect and to reconnect, if you will. So, I mean, it's a good, in my mind, it's knowing that you can do that. And when that connection happens, there are a lot of ways to help you feel the feeling that you get from that connection. There are good feelings from making those connections. I mean, there just are. And I think it's a underutilized. It's underutilized in my mind. Like, it's something that just we don't do enough of. And if folks realized how good it was, or how good you could feel from doing that, I feel like this would be something we wouldn't even have to talk about.
Yeah. I think I might build on that slightly. I mean, first off, my experience is exactly as you described, and it's a two-way street that I have people whom I've helped and people who've helped me just by virtue of being reconnected. Some of that might be in our past. Some of it could be um, like I've reached out to people, for example, that I didn't work with or didn't really know, but had some affiliation with. That could be part of my 3-person strategy that I talked about. I would say it's super interesting for the younger in career, and I'll pick on a particular. Let me pick on a particular job family. Let's say one that's today maybe challenging for new entrants and challenging for existing people. Software development. Software development is changing. It's changed dramatically, I think, in the last year. It's going to change even further in the next year. I've heard all kinds of headlines, whether they're true or not, about people coming out of, I'm a computer science major, but people coming out of computer science school back when I did that years ago, job was pretty assured. Whether you got to go to Microsoft or not, maybe that was a question mark, but for the most part, your skills were really needed. Does that mean there aren't opportunities for software developers in the future? And so I would say 2 pieces of advice. One of them is think broadly about that question. An analogy I would use is, if 1% of the world's population wrote the software that we rely on and love today, that allow this podcast to work, that make our phones work, and all of the rest, my personal belief is that the tools and the technology evolving take away a lot of the things that we all hated as software developers and let us do more and be more creative, but it will change the way we operate. And that will lead to 2% of the world's population. Maybe it doubles. Maybe 3% of the population are involved in actual generation of software in contribution with others that bring different kinds of perspectives and roles to solutions that solve problems for people in the world. So I think it's a fabulous opportunity. It's easy to carry a mindset of doom and gloom, like, oh my God, this is all changing. I thought I was going to have a great, stable career, and now it feels different. And you could get stuck in that story. Instead, you might think, how do I use these tools to be one of those people who are a 10x developer or a 100x developer, if you've heard that term before, where they really have achieved scale because they've learned how to operate with other people, or they've learned how to operate within scaled systems within a software development and engineering kind of team. And so, one, I would encourage that kind of a mindset. And if you're new coming out of, or I think you said freshy.
Yeah, freshies is what he said. Yeah.
If you're
Dude, that was not my term, for the record. I've had a couple people use that term. Now, I will be honest with you, many of them are not stateside. Okay. Many of them come from alternative countries, but they use the term freshy quite often. So
interesting.
Maybe you learned something.
I had never heard it before. That was a new one for me.
But my second point was, like, pick a thematic area. If you're new in software development and you're excited about AI tools, let's say, just for the sake of argument, but you're struggling to find a job because all of a sudden it feels like entry-level jobs have gotten constricted in some way. And I think that may be true because there's a lot of uncertainty in business. And so people are going, I don't really know, will I need half the number of developers I have today? And so you might see moments where it feels like there's pauses or things are going slower than they were before. I would suggest, perhaps as a theme, if you look to connect with somebody who's an alum or maybe worked in a company you worked in before and is an alumni that way, but has more time in their career, more experience in the career, you might think of, I'm looking for some advice on how to think about this change. And I would tell you that as an experienced person, when somebody reaches out and asks for my advice, it feels fantastic. I love helping other people. I have found in my connections with others that that's true universally. The second thing I would add to that is that if somebody takes an interest in helping you, and not everybody will, they might give you a pointer, they might point you to the next thing, so you might have a door that opens. Count that as a win. Maybe there's something you can offer them. There's a contribution that you can offer them as well. But every now and then there'll be somebody who will take a vested interest in you. They will become more of a sponsor for you. That is gold. That is absolute gold, because now they are vested in your future, which means they're not only going to say, hey, you might think about going to this company because there's some job opportunities. They'll actually make a phone call and say, hey, I recommend this person. And they may not know you any more than the fact that you were an alumnus at some point, and then you had 2 or 3 rich conversations, and so they got to know you a bit, but they developed a feeling and a set of ownership, and that's not going to happen every time by any stretch, but it will happen.
It does.
It will happen, and it's magic.
Absolutely. I love that, simply because, especially with folks who are new in their career, they may not even realize what they have when that happens. And I think it's important to highlight that, because I wish somebody said it to me. Because, I had somebody who took that kind of an interest, and I didn't even know it. And then when I even figured it out, still didn't understand the value of it that I do now. Right. That's the way what can I, 30, can I look back and say something to, go back 30 years and have a conversation with 24, 25-year-old Sam and say, dude, you need to listen to this. That's it. You will, it's like any other, fostering or, nurturing that you have to do, whether it's, you're trying to grow a garden, or you have to take shots, and some stuff's going to take, some stuff's not. And when it doesn't, that's okay. It might sting a little bit, whatever, no problem. Take the time to process that and try again, because there are a lot of people out there that are very willing to help. And somebody, as you said, it won't be every time, but somebody might, for whatever reason, see something and take an interest. And when they do, you want to nurture that, because it's a big deal. And you might not see it when it happens. And, it's something you might want to at least be able to look out for, because I know voice of experience, I did not immediately
add one more.
That.
Yeah, Sam, let me add one more dimension to this that I think could be helpful for this part of it. And you might say, well, how do I start this conversation with somebody?
Yep.
With Ron, it's like, old hat, right? We can talk about the kids and then we get to the real topics. But what if it's somebody who maybe I don't know that well, or I haven't talked to in a while. We don't have personal, commonality, and we can't really talk about Amex 25 years ago, because 25 years ago is so long, we both don't remember it. In the insurance industry, which is where I was, is totally different now. And that company doesn't even exist in the same way. And there's all sorts of reasons. And so here's what I would suggest, and I'm going to come to tip number 2 here, maybe in line with this, but we're all in a place today. So I am in my job doing what I do today. What's important, I think, is to have a very simple way to say, where am I going? What do I want? What do I want next? If I'm the example of a freshie or newer in career person in software development, and I'm looking for a job, that could be that simple. I'm looking for a job. How do I think about landing my first or my second job, being 1 or 2 years maybe in my career in this era of AI? What should I be doing? What should I be doing? Claude Code? Should I be watching am I an open claw dude? What are the things that I should be doing? And so I think getting clear on what I want and why. Most importantly, why. Why do I want that? And in a way that you can say, hey, Sam, thanks for taking this time for me. You know, I'm really looking to do X because that's what gives me fulfillment. And that's where I want to invest more energy and time in my career where I gain more fulfillment. I don't just want to do the technical work. I want to do the technical work, but I'm super interested in MongoDB because it's going to help me with influencing my company in a whole new way. And you've been at MongoDB for a while, and so I'd love to get your point of view. Something that tells you the what and the why in a way that's straightforward and simple, and then magic can happen. Like they now know, oh, I know how to help. Like I get it now. I know how to help. It's not ambiguous. So think about that. And then the second tip I was going to share, I'll just throw it out there and then we can talk about it, is be selfish. Be selfish with some of your time. If you're working for a company, it's very easy to every week spend all of your time on whatever's coming at you. And you're going to have more coming at you than you'll ever be able to do. There's 100 things, you have to pick 10. You do the best you can. The next week, there's another 10. They're different than the ones you thought from last week. That's just life. That's the way it works in the world of business. Things are changing fast. There's more change now than ever in history. And I don't think that's going to slow down. So be selfish. And by that, I just mean super simply, put time on your calendar in a time when your brain is functioning, not Friday afternoon, not Wednesday night. For me, morning is a good time, but put a block of time on your calendar to invest in yourself. You can call it personal development. It could be that you go do experimentation with AI tools. It could be you do something that's oriented with how you might do a better job in your company, in your career, or the opportunity that you're working on today. It could be I'm honing my story. So when I talk to 3 people next week, I'm going to tell them what I want in a way that's more clear. Invest in yourself, spend time, quality time, block it, cherish it. I tried to block 4 hours of my time starting a couple of years ago, about the same time as my 3 meetings per week. 4 hours was a little bit much. Didn't really work out super well. I've gotten to be really religious about 2 hours of time in my calendar. And I block 2 hours. I happen to do it on a Friday because a lot of people sort of have these ideas of, and it's fairly common, at least in my organization, for managers to want people to invest in their energy and time for learning and development. And Fridays are often a kind of safe haven for no meetings in some groups and teams, not all places by any stretch, but pick a time that's like that. If you're an East Coaster and you work for a West Coaster company, I would suggest morning.
Yeah.
But if you like, some people are night people. So, do it at night, but be religious about it. And then try to think about what am I going to do so that you don't end up with the time and then you just dawdle it away.
Right. Yeah. No doom scrolling, no taking calls, no interruptions. Right. And one of the things I had done for my team when I was at Amazon is I was a big fan of no meeting Fridays. And I asked my team to block 1 to 2 hours every week to do, Google calls it moonshot projects. I just said, I need you to invest in yourself. AI is changing, or think about a business problem, or some sort of a problem you want to solve, and spend an hour to 2 hours just focused on that. And yes, you don't need to just, some days you're going to spend 3 hours, some days you're going to spend 45 minutes. But the idea is carve off the time to invest in yourself so you're a better person tomorrow than you are today. And you need to invest in not chasing the shiny object, whatever it happens to be, right? I've seen a lot of people go down that rat hole. And they want to, Sam, you and I worked with a gentleman who, he was a senior infrastructure consultant on his way to principal. And then he suddenly decided one day he wanted to become a developer. And he had tried to invest the time to do that. But on his best day, even spending a couple hours a week trying to do that, he was a junior developer who I could not bill at a senior consultant rate. That gentleman ended up leaving the consulting organization and became a junior developer on a different team within the company, but he was very passionate about reinvigorating his career in a different direction than what he was really, really good at by learning something net new. And Sam, I think you remember who he was in our Florida office.
Yeah.
So brilliant. Love him to death. I've seen posts by him on LinkedIn. He's done really, really well as a developer, but he kind of rebooted himself in his career. But that time is pristine time. It means, if you're working like my folks, I told them, do not take meetings. Don't answer a Slack. If it's from me, I will text you if it's super, super important. I need you to do something. But we block that time as pristine, personal self-developmental time. I had a gentleman on my team who actually got his, what did he get? He got a certification in, oh goodness, it was a data certification before AI was a thing. So this is going back several years ago. And then he ultimately loved the guy to death. He ultimately left Amazon, went to a different company that was, guess what? Very super, super focused on data. I think he went to Datadog. I don't think he went to Mongo. Sorry, Sam. But I think he went to Datadog, and he's doing brilliantly. If I see what he does, posts on LinkedIn. But you never know where those personal moonshots. I know I'm stealing a Googleism, but you never know where those personal moonshots are going to take you.
That's right. I'm working on one myself.
Very cool.
I think we talked a little bit about that, Sam. Is it your AI agent?
Yeah, one? I mean, I texted
it's brilliant,
you,
by the way.
I texted
we
you the morning report that I got this morning.
We talked about that. I don't know if we're going to. I don't know if we're going to include that in this podcast, but right. What was her name? You couldn't use Jarvis because you'd get sued. So yeah, Aria.
And I probably can get sued for Aria because Aria is a thing too. But that's all right. I put the periods in there now, so it's A period, R period, I period, A period.
Just call open Aria. You're fine.
It's important. It's important to not only make the time for yourself, but also take that time to do stuff that is outside of your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's where you're going to grow, especially those who I in some cases, I don't know, there was an article about it that we were sharing around, Gen Xers and AI, and maybe they don't need to hear it, but what I've told teams with respect to AI, for example, but it goes for any of that personal time. Be bold. Ron, you called it a personal moonshot, but the idea is be bold. The point is be bold. Do stretch. Take the time to stretch yourself, to do something that is a little outside your comfort zone, or something that you're reconnecting to within yourself, so that you can, it'll likely take you in a direction that you didn't even see coming, or it may reignite a passion in something that you haven't felt in a very long time. My little personal project here, I mean, I am working on integrations with so many systems, and I got to tell you, it is fun. I spend time, and I'm like enjoying the crap out of trying to debug this thing when stuff goes sideways, because it doesn't just automatically work, and learning about the new interfaces that I'm dealing with and everything else. And it's terrific. And if you don't want to do something like that, even when you're at work, there are lots of different AI tools out there. See how far you can stretch it. Where are the limits? I know where they are where I'm at, because I've hit probably every single one of them. So,
but every single thing we just talked about, right? Yeah. All becomes a conversation piece potentially during a future interview.
Absolutely.
Okay. I used to use, tell me how you stay up on what's going on in technology. Explain to me how you learn when things change. And, we'll talk about a pivot in the industry, right? How do you learn about it? What did you do? What did you do? How did it impact you? Right? And what are you doing around it? Those are real interview questions. And having a story, talking about what you're actually doing, how you're doing it, and failing, succeeding and failing and learning the entire way, that goes a long way. That's a differentiator between hiring Matt or hiring Sam. If one of you's got a story where you're doing amazing things for yourself, learning new things, versus somebody who's just a subject matter expert who's done the same thing for 5 years, I'd just as soon go hire the person who's pushing the boundaries and learn the new stuff, because the old stuff is the old stuff. It's still going to be the old stuff a year from now. So again, this all builds to your portfolio, to your stories, and it makes you, it's a differentiator for you in an interview scenario.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I agree completely. You remember, Ron, in our time together early on, we were, doubling and tripling the size of our team. We were hiring on a regular basis, but we kept the bar really high, and we were looking for people who, they could do the job, but that wasn't good enough. We wanted people who could do the job we didn't know about yet, the one that was around the corner. And so, people who are curious, people who are trying things, people who say, I don't know where I'll be in 10 years, but I know I'm going here in the next 3 years, and why. And maybe it is a job change. Maybe I'm going to go from an infrastructure architect to a software developer for whatever my why is, my reason is, and I'm willing to become a junior software developer in order to do that. That's meaning. That's, that'll pay off for that individual in so many ways that are not necessarily financial, because finances are important, but they're only one dimension of our human existence. So
it really is.
I think you could add one other thing. Like, I'm in the tech industry today. I do product management. I want to write a book. How do I write a book? How do I write a book today?
One word at a time, Matt. One word at a time.
In the era of AI today, how do I write a book? How do I get my thoughts out? Like, I'm really good with ideation and thoughts. I get stuck when I write, and, one way to think about that is, like, what questions can I ask somebody who might have some experience that way? Who could I model? How could I use tools like Granola and Whisper, and even Google has come along with some pretty interesting voice integrated stuff where I can just think and get my thoughts on paper in some way that isn't cursed by my, I'll confess, my Virgo tendency to make sure everything is right. So I'm editing while I'm thinking, and I'm in my own way, and I can't really get everything, get it out, get the flow, if you will. And, that little technique I just shared about, like, getting the flow and separating the editing, that's from modeling somebody. That's from learning from somebody who's a true writer that kind of figured it out, right? And they know it's a curse for them too, but they actually do lots of stuff. And I think, well, I have writer's block. Well, I don't have writer's block. What I have is editor's disease.
Right.
Actually, and so
definitely feel that.
It could just be simply that I'm interested in doing something else in the world. That could be my why, or that could be the thing that I'm going toward. And it may not be tied to what I do on my day job every day, but it's a very interesting thing for a discussion with your network, with a mentor, potentially a sponsor. It could lead to connections. It could lead to learning opportunities. And then when you're interviewing for that next job at MongoDB, even though you're not going in there to be an author, it's an awesome story for an interview. I learned to do this, and this is how I overcame my hurdles.
I love that. I got to tell you, like, this is a terrific discussion. We had our previous conversation last week. That was just the three of us. And I got to tell you that, like, I walked out of that conversation fired up, and I find myself, when the three of us get together again, here we are a second time, I feel like, man, I'm walking out of this conversation even more fired up than I was after the last conversation. That's terrific. I love this.
That's awesome. I can see it on your face.
Well, I think it's funny because listening to your story and what you're doing yourself, what you offer some of the people that you connect with and the people that are your customers, or what, and then just some of the things that you ideate on here, I'm saying, man, I've thought all these things, or I've gotten stuck myself, right? There are plenty of things where I have been willing to challenge myself, but at the same time, listening to you, I all of a sudden I'm like, yeah, I challenge myself, but then I'm limiting myself in how I challenge myself. Why am I doing that? I want to try these things. And that's
human
it,
condition.
it makes me think a little bit more about it. So I think that is tremendous. And I think this is a terrific conversation. I'm glad that I'm grateful that Ron reached out and said, hey, let's get Matt on. And I was like, yeah, sure. He's like, let's have a conversation first. No problem. And I walked out of that conversation. I was like, I was fired the hell up. I really was. I'm like, this was an amazing conversation. I can't wait to have him on and everything else. So that's really, really awesome. So, very grateful to have gotten connected or reconnected, as it were. But certainly, Ron, thank you for being willing to extend your network and bring them in as guests, and Matt, for your time, because I think this is there's tremendous gold in here for people who are trying to figure out how to either move forward in what they want to do or get unstuck, because they might just be stuck. And there's quite a number of folks out there who, especially if a layoff comes, they feel stuck because they're like, well, all I've been doing is this, and this is all I know.
For sure. Well, I'll tell you, first off, thank you for having me. It's, I'm grateful for the opportunity. I've enjoyed our conversations as well. I'm glad if even one person takes away a nugget and feels empowered or takes agency and feel like they're more in control, have more confidence than maybe they did before. And I just love what you guys are doing, creating a platform for more people to do that, for more people to feel good about how and when they can take control and give them tips and techniques, and maybe feel okay about the fact that what they're dealing with is challenging, and that others are in the same place. Whether it's I saw your conversations on burnout, for example, which is very common in the tech industry. It may be common generally, but I know it's very common, and it's a thread consistently at Amazon. And largely it's because there's lots of change, and there's lots of pressure, and there's unknowns, and and you end up internalizing all of that. And just to be able to hear from other people that I'm okay, and maybe you pick up a tip or a technique or something that you can apply that gives you a chance to get, as you put, unstuck. That's super cool. So I love what you guys are doing, and I'm glad to have a chance to participate in some way, shape, or form.
And thank you for reconnecting, connecting this way, Matt. I know you and I've had conversations for a long time, and I think when I approached you for this, and we got a call, did a kind of a pre-call to talk about what we want to talk about, and I think it was just an outstanding experience. And I do greatly appreciate your mentorship, your sponsorship, and everything that you've ever brought to the table, bringing me aboard and helping me along. And my goal in life is to, as Sam says, take care of others and help pass this on. And I don't claim to be an expert in everything, but I'm happy to share my personal experiences for folks, both good and bad. I want you to know the good, the bad, and the ugly that I've experienced. And having folks like you, Matt, in my stable, kind of helping me and guiding me, supporting me, kicking me in the butt when I need to get kicked in the butt because I'm down on myself. I greatly appreciate that. And I do want to thank you again for your time. And I also want to thank you for the great ideas that you brought forward. And I'm hoping this is the first of more than a few guest appearances on our podcast.
Oh man, I really, really hope so. Like, I walk away from these conversations energized every single time, and I love it. I thank you, because I am grateful for that. And Ron, it's awesome to have for you, what Matt has done for you, what you have done for me over the years. I mean, everybody kind of needs to have that person that will kick you in the ass when you when you need, what is it we used to say growing up in Jersey? You need a hop in the ass. So
That's funny.
but yeah, we all need it, and having folks like that that are invested in you and willing to continue the connection. Those connections mean everything. So yeah, absolutely.
If you're listening this far, your call to action is take Matt's advice, try to make connections, reach out to somebody this month. I mean, today we're recording this March 16th. Between now and the end of March,
it'll be live by March 17th, St. Patty's Day.
Okay.
So
all right, well, we certainly hope so. You're not wearing your green today, Sam. I'm very disappointed. If the call to action here and the takeaway is reach out to folks in your network who potentially maybe you haven't talked to in a while, maybe establish a new one. If you're a freshie or you're new out of college, you go through your alumni network, find 2 or 3 people between now and the end of the month. You have 2 weeks. All right. Our personal call to action is to go find a couple of folks to talk to who you've known before, and you're going to rekindle a conversation, not because you want something, but just because you're a human being and you're reaching out just to make human being connections.
You want a connection.
Exactly. Yep. You may never need them for anything, but hell, they may need you for something someday. You want to be able to have that 2-way door.
Oh yeah. That's awesome. Like, that's it right there. Yep. They may need you. And the only way we'll get through all the crazy going on is to be there for one another.
Right.
Agree completely.
All right. Awesome conversation. We will see this shortly. On behalf of my co-host Ron, our fabulous guest Matt Collins, thank you all for listening. Remember, take care of one another. And if you can't think of a way of taking care of one another, consider No Kid Hungry at nokidhungry.org. There are kids out there who that's where they get their nutritious meals every single day. So consider making a donation to No Kid Hungry. We are proud to be able to participate in 2026 Podcast-thon. There are some other great podcasts out there. After you're done making sure you listen to all of ours, feel free to check out one of theirs. And on behalf of all of us here at TechCurrents, thank you for listening today. Be well.
Thank you for listening to the TechCurrents podcast. The TechCurrents podcast is hosted by Sam Cavalier. All content and views expressed as part of the TechCurrents podcast are solely those of the hosts and guests, and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the podcast platform, any employment organizations, or any affiliated entities. This podcast is informational purposes and should not be considered for professional, legal, or financial advice. Please consult with your qualified, licensed experts for your specific needs. This is Daniel Iverson. Thank you for listening.